In practice, the old saying is the prosecutor could indict a hole in the wall, the prosecutor could indict a ham sandwich. We have in our society something called a grand jury or a probable cause determination. And typically what happens when somebody is indicted or charged with crimes, we have a grand jury. And the grand jury's role is to meet in secret with the prosecutor, and they're supposed to be a bulwark against this kind of stuff. In other words, they have to decide if there's a threshold amount of evidence, just a beginning or starting point amount of evidence that would be that is there that would enable the prosecutor then to take the next step and actually charge somebody and take them to trial. And in theory, if there's not enough evidence, the grand jury could vote not to indict or not to charge somebody. In practice, the old saying is the prosecutor could indict a hole in the wall, the prosecutor could indict a ham sandwich. And the defense doesn't even have a right to know there's a grand jury convened, let alone testify at a grand jury. Prosecutor, I want my client to testify in front of the grand jury. The prosecutor could say, what are you talking about? Well, I know there's a grand jury. I'm not permitted to disclose any of that. Well, my client wants to testify. Yeah, no. No. Now, other times, there was a jurisdiction here in Central Ohio that always invited the defendant to testify at grand jury. And, on the one hand, you could say, well, that's sort of noble of them. On the other hand, how many poor defendants without lawyers went in and testified in front of the grand jury and made all sorts of incriminating statements under oath? It can go really bad. They decided it. They didn't want to indict it, so be it.
I feel like grand juries could do more damage than good for a defendant. Absolutely.
But back to the point, the grand jury would have approved these charges. And you can look, I'm not here to stand on a soapbox and say the grand jury is a perfect process that always protects a defendant from crappy indictments, because it doesn't. But that's what the law is going to say it does. Here we enter this realm of the mystique of the law. You get a jury instruction that says, you jurors are not permitted to consider the fact that this guy was accused of doing this conduct before to determine whether he did it this time. But you can look at that fact for other reasons. Like nonsense. And you can't instruct your way out of what human nature really is. And they're going to say here, the judge I think will say here, well, look, irrespective of what you may think, defense lawyers, about the sanctity of the grand jury process and whether it was actually a good bulwark against a crappy indictment, it's good enough. There was a probable cause determination. Therefore, we can wash our hands of it and say the overshadowing of the serious charges isn't a problem.